Hey. Oh, let me make sure. Okay, now we are ready. Welcome to this celebration of the Queen of Steeplechase Park. My name is Greg Newton. I am the co-founder, along with my partner, Donnie Jokum, of the Bureau of General Services Queer Division, which is the space you're in right now. Now you can clap. The Bureau is an all-volunteer queer bookstore that Donnie and I founded in 2012, and we've been here at the LGBT Community Center since 2014. So our regular store hours are Wednesdays through Sundays, 1 to 7 p.m. And then we often stay open late in the evenings for events such as this. As an all-volunteer organization, we are in the habit of asking for money on a regular basis. So I'm going to pass around a bag. If you're able to throw something in, that's great. If not, don't worry. And if you'd rather support us by buying books, that makes so much sense because we're a bookstore. But I'll pass this around. There's cash in here. There's change if you need it. There's also a Venmo QR code. So you can scan that if you want to do that. For folks at home, you can Venmo us at BGSQD. I'll pass that around. Somebody has to be the first one. If you're not already on our email list and you would like to be, you can sign up for that at the back of the room. And you'll get an email every other Monday about our many upcoming events. And seeing as we're in June, it is high season. We have events all the time. Many of which are actually related to our current exhibition, which is a collaboration with a space in Philadelphia called Dyke Art House. Juno Rosenhaus, who is the founder of Dyke Art House, collaborated with the photographer Lola Flash, and they curated this show. They did an open call to lesbian artists over 40, and we have some 63, 64 works of art by different lesbian identified, dyke identified artists over the age of 40. And this is our summer show, so it's up through September 8th. And Juno gave a tour today. We have a couple more tours that she's going to be giving. So again, check out our events calendar. And in 2 weeks, 2 Fridays from now, several of the artists will be here in conversation talking about their works and talking about the history of lesbian-specific exhibitions. So check it all out on the calendar, bgsqd.com. Before I introduce David and Blair, I wanted to read a land acknowledgement and a call for a ceasefire in Gaza. And I will say, the ceasefire call is very brief and pointed. Some people have asked me, why don't you mention this? Why don't you mention that? I'm happy to talk with you afterwards, but the main reason is because we want to get to the event and I can't get into everything. So it's focused on our government. So the Bureau acknowledges that our organization operates on the unceded land of the Munsee Lenape. We encourage you to join the Bureau in signing up to make a monthly donation to the American Indian Community House's Mannahatta Fund. The Mannahatta Fund, according to its website, is an invitation to all settlers and non-native people who wish to acknowledge the legacy of theft and genocide that comprise the history of New York City and the United States. And you can find out more at mannahattafund.org. We also want to recognize that today, June 7th, is the 245th day of Israel's genocidal campaign against the Palestinian people, funded by our tax dollars and enabled by our government's unwavering support. We hope that you will join us in calling for an immediate permanent ceasefire, an end to the siege, and an end to the occupation in order to stop the collective punishment of Palestinians and to ensure the swift delivery of desperately needed food, water, medicine, fuel, and humanitarian aid to the people of Gaza. Our greater hope is for peace, justice, and liberation from oppression for all people everywhere. David Ciminello is a Lambda Literary Fellow and the proud recipient of a Table 4 Writers Foundation grant. His fiction has appeared in the Lambda Award-winning anthology Portland Queer, Tales of the Rose City, Nailed Magazine, and in the Untold Gates. His original screenplay, Bruno, an Academy Nicol Fellowship in Screenwriting Finals, did I get that right? Was directed by Shirley MacLaine. Shirley. As an actor, David has guest starred on Murder, She Wrote, Matlock, Kojak, and Seinfeld. That's impressive. Blair Fell is an actor, playwright, screenwriter, and novelist. His debut novel, The Sign for Home, was longlisted for the Center for Fiction's first book prize, and was selected both as an Indie Next and Indies Introduced book by the American Booksellers Association. His second novel, Disco Witches of Fire Island, will be released May 2025. Hopefully we'll have an event here. Yes, please give him a very warm welcome.
So, David, I think we have to get this out of the way. David and I were roommates in college for 3 weeks because we hated each other, like really hated each other. And then what happened? We ran into each other in Los Angeles like 30 years later or something.
Yeah, we just kept coming into each other's lives, circling back around like Halley's Comet. I would like run into you every couple of years. First time it was
at Sunset Plaza, wasn't it?
It was outside of Crunch Gym, yeah.
In Sunset Plaza, we were both. I was doing a play there. I used to be a playwright, and you were just starting to write film then.
Yeah, I was mostly acting in Los Angeles for a number of years, and then I started screenwriting. I think around the time we re-met and fell in love, I was screenwriting.
Yeah, and what was it like working with Shirley?
Shirley
MacLaine.
It was like riding the Coney Island roller coaster.
Interesting. So hey, David and I, it's just weird that we're both novelists now. Never on my radar to become a novelist. And we kind of like our careers just started to like, we ran into each other again in Jackson Heights at the Gay Pride Parade in Jackson Heights, where I, lived within, I still live there. And we both had started working in fiction, right? And it was like, this is so weird again. And that was like maybe 10 years after when we first ran into each other after many years. And then we just started, that's when we really started becoming friends, was then. And then in the last couple of years, while I was finishing Disco Witches, you were finishing this, and we kind of exchanged manuscripts. We'd go to P-Town together, and we'd exchange this and work on this. And I immediately, the first time I ever heard this book was either in this room or the room underneath here. He did a reading with some friends, and instantly, and this was a long time ago. This is like 17 years ago, 15 years ago.
I want to say like 2009, maybe, or 2011. Oh, it was 2 years, yeah.
It was a while ago. And I was like, holy crap, this is amazing. I was pretty blown away by it back then. And then we started working on it, and I'm like, his voice is so unique and original, but it was like, there was like some things like, I'm like, but is it gonna like hold together? Then he worked on more, sold it, and I read it because I was doing this, and I was blown away. This is such an original voice. It's such a fun read. I'm the slowest reader in the entire world, and I finished it, like for me, a week is a really fast read. This is such a great read. If you haven't read it, read it. It is so much fun. You do not hear any voice like David's. It's so great. And I'm just like so happy to be on this journey with you and like becoming novelists as old men. But there you go. Anyway, what I'd like to first talk to you about is, how did this book come about? How did this idea for Bella and this book start?
Well, the book is based on the life of my great aunt, who was a.
We'll pull her back up.
We'll pull her back up. So she was this loud, larger than life, lousy, loud, audacious character that used to blow into town when I was a kid from California, which is where she was living, right? I mean, in heels in the sand, which just about sums it all up. When I was 8 years old, I was watching, so in New York, New Jersey area, I grew up in northern Jersey. There was a thing called the 4:30 movie. And they would have Natalie Wood week, Warren Beatty week, and for a week or two, they would run movies of this actor or actress. And I was watching, it was Natalie Wood week, and I was watching the movie Gypsy with my mother. And it was after the Gotta Have a Gimmick number where the strippers teach Natalie Wood how to strip. I turned to my mother when it was over and she was giggling and laughing. And I said, "What's so funny?" And she said, "My aunt used to do that." And I said, "What aunt?" She said, "Your great aunt Emily. She was a burlesque performer in Coney Island." And so that's what planted the seed.
Wow, wow, wow. And so I'm just curious, like, when you started working on this, you started in as short stories, or you knew right away it was going to be a novel, or what?
No, I didn't. So I was a professional actor from 1988 to about 2000. And when I transitioned from that into screenwriting and wrote a script and got that produced and decided, yeah, this is sort of like jumping from the frying pan into the fire. So I decided to move up to Portland, Oregon and see where my creative voice took me. And it took me to prose writing. And this idea, this image of my great aunt, I couldn't get it out of my head. And so I had gone to Florida to interview her. And she told me a couple of stories, one about her first interview for a dance job in Coney Island. And I took that back with me to Portland, Oregon, and I was in a writing workshop. It was a flash fiction workshop. And the teacher threw out a prompt, and my aunt's story dropped into my head. And so I wrote the first interview she had in Coney Island when she was about 17 for a burlesque gig. And I wrote it pretty much verbatim. I mean, the dialogue is pretty much all hers. And that was the first piece I wrote. And from there, I just kept writing and writing and writing and writing about her.
Okay, so I want us to get into like reading some of the book. So you have an option to read what you plan to read to begin, or do you want to read that part that was the first one you did first? Which do you want to do? I know I'm changing gears here, but could you kind of just intro it?
Yeah. All right. So I'll read this is the very first piece I wrote. And this is when my aunt, who was about 17 at the time, ran away after giving birth to a baby. The baby was taken away when she was 15. And it's called The Jewish Cigar. When Belladonna Marie Donato sauntered into Lester Feinberg's Midtown Manhattan vaudeville and burlesque agency, he couldn't believe his eyes. He couldn't believe spiked heels could hold up that much young woman. She had a pair of meaty legs that rose to a set of capacious hips, and the tatas that shot out of her chest were barely contained by her red polka-dotted top. For their size, they held up well and pointed directly at Lester, their torpedo-like aim daring him to challenge their bold accusations. "Well, well, 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 well," he said when she stepped in. "What can I do for you?" Bella slapped the ad Lester had placed in the Herald News, "Wanted female dancers for Coney Island Review," onto his desk and took a seat in one of the two chairs facing him. The fans were broken. The old vaudeville agent had his jacket off and both sleeves rolled up. He was smoking a cigar to keep cool, yet the buxom piece of Italian candy sitting in front of him hadn't broken a sweat, even after climbing 5 flights of stairs with a suitcase and a pink hat box in her hands. How old was she under all of that glamour girl makeup? 16, 17? God, please let her be 18. The scent of her was driving him crazy. She smelled like lilac powder mingled with musk, the kind of musk that called to a man the way tuna called to cats. Lester had seen it all, done it all, but he wanted to drop on all fours and beg for a scratch. It was all he could do to pull the soggy cigar out of his mouth. "What's your name, kid?" "Belladonna Marie Donato." From now on, it's Bella Donna Marie. Really? Yeah. You dance? Doesn't everybody? Feinberg, as he was known on the circuit, took an even hit off his tightly rolled imitation Havana and exhaled, blowing the smoke in front of Bella's face. She had the astonishing face of a young gypsy queen. What the hell was she? Spanish? Lithuanian? Italian, maybe? Her lips were full. Her turbulent eyes sparkled. The hair on her head was mischievous and wild. Her tits looked like two circus barrels. The gams went on for miles. Lester looked at her. You bring a bathing suit? What the hell for? I didn't come here to swim. Lester's nose caught a whiff of heartbreak behind the girl's cheap perfume and the delicious scent of pain and desperation behind the tough chin. What size are you, kid? None of your goddamn business. 38 triple D. I'm gonna need to see you in a swimsuit. Lester frantically opened a desk drawer, rifled around, and pulled out a small red bathing costume. It was the color of a vine-ripened tomato. Step into the closet and try this on. How the hell do you expect me to get into that goddamn thing? You want the job? Once in the dark, Bella dropped her skirt, undid her blouse and bra, kicked off her shoes, rolled down her stockings, and peeled down her panties. The wound across her belly suddenly felt tender. It felt like it still had teeth. She tried not to think about her baby as she took a deep breath and squeezed the tomato red suit up and over her tender love bunnies. Knowing full well what heels did for a woman's carriage and calves, she slipped her spikes back on, tweaked her cheeks, and pinched her nipples hard. She told herself this was just another goddamn Beauty and the Beast contest. Heaven help me, she whispered. She kissed the cross on her mama's rosary beads, dropped them into her cleavage, crossed herself, took a deep breath, and stepped back into the heavy heat of Feinberg's office. The horny old Gagutz was standing buck naked in front of his desk, stroking his irregularly cut, yam-like bobbing Brooklyn special. You put that goddamn cigar back in its wrapper, or I'm gonna dig my heels into your balls so hard, you're gonna wish you'd stay behind that sad excuse of a desk, stroking that sorry excuse for a dick. Lester swallowed hard. Can you hula?
Now, before we go to the reading that you were supposed to do, how much of that is real? How much of that happened to your aunt?
Everything except the very end. All of the dialogue is pretty much hers. I mean, she told me that story and, you know, she embellished. It was hot. I was going up the stairs. I had my pink hat box. And, you know, he said to me, can you swim? And I looked at him and I said, doesn't everybody? It all came out of her mouth.
Okay, so now let's go back. How did this, she's 15 in this, in that scene?
I want to say 16 going on 17 because it's
Okay.
about a year after the birth of the baby, after the baby's taken away. She searches for the baby, tries to get the baby back, tries to raise money to get the baby back, doesn't get the baby back.
Okay, and so how does she begin? You have something that you can read where Bella gets her start, right? As far as
Well,
Or
she didn't
introduction.
always start out as the queen of Steeplechase Park. Okay, it wasn't until she met her queer friend Torelli Lombardi, who sort of did a big Pygmalion transformation on her.
oh, we know we love makeovers. I love makeovers. Every book I've ever written has a makeover. Could you read that book?
Sure. Well, I'll introduce Torelli, and then I'll get into the makeover. This is a chapter titled Miss Fancy Pants. The first time Bella saw him, he was perched like an exotic bird in the middle of the downtown trolley in a white Fauntleroy suit, collared with a satin bow tie the size of a summer chrysanthemum. He was a short, slight boy, maybe about 14, Bella guessed. A fuzzy shadow of a mustache bloomed above his upper lip. His eyebrows arched in perfectly plucked half moons. Two fat shopping bags rested at the toes of his sissy sock-collared, high-buttoned shoes like a pair of obedient poodles. Amazingly, passengers ignored the young Nancy boy sitting with a pound of sugar in his pants, but Bella stared the entire ride down Middleton Avenue. She couldn't take her eyes off him. The second time she saw him, he was perched on a stool at the SS Kresge 5 and dime lunch counter, gingerly nibbling on a fried bologna burger and sipping a long straw muffin top You Bet egg cream. This time, he was staring at her as she circled the fake jewelry displays, accidentally knocking things to the ground, replacing some of them and pocketing the rest. I know what you're doing, he boldly said when she sat 3 stools away from him and ordered a dry meatloaf sandwich. Excuse me? He dramatically sucked on his soda. You're a thief. I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, yes, you do. And you're going to help me with something I need, or I'm going to rat on you. Bella popped off her stool and strode over to him. She pressed her face up to his and kept her voice real low. Listen, Miss Fancy Pants, the name is Torelli Lombardi. Your name is going to be fucking mud in a slim second if you don't shut up. Do you know where they send girls like you? To a hideous hoosegow deep in the bowels of godforsaken Pennsylvania to lick grimy floors clean and scrub rancid toilets with a toothbrush. Okay, you little asshole, what do you want? So he has a hobby. He loves to knit, and the Baptist woman who runs the yarn shop won't let boys in, so he gets her to go in and shoplift for her.
This
And
is Torelli, right?
This is Torelli. And once they're done shoplifting, the two of them celebrate at Bond's ice cream parlor. It's called Whore's Paradise. The two new pals celebrated the heist with a triple scoop sundae in Bond's ice cream parlor. Have you ever been to Coney Island? Torelli asked Bella. No. Have you? Yes. My favorite grandmother has a beautiful house not far from there. What's it like? It's simply stunning, chock full of amazing antiques. What's Coney Island like? Coney Island is a regular whore's paradise. They call it Sin City. Sounds like the perfect place for me. Torelli opened his newspaper and pointed to an employment ad. While you were grabbing my yarn, I found this for you. Wanted, female dancers for Coney Island Review. Must have fantastic figure, must be beautiful. Only ages 18 to 25 need apply. No experience necessary. But I'm only 15, Bella said. That'll work to your advantage, believe me. Bella tongued the gap between her teeth. I don't think I'm pretty enough, she said. I can make you gorgeous. You can? The little dandy ripped the ad out of the paper and thrust it across the table. Let's go back to the 5 and dime and steal some makeup. I already have a bunch, Bella said. No offense, honey, but whatever you have isn't really working for you. Fuck off. What color lipstick and nail polish should we lift? Whore's Paradise, honey.
Yeah.
All right, so here's the makeover. Passaic Pygmalion. After a successful burglar run through SS Kresge, a packed bus ride, 2 trolley connections, and a long walk down several well-tended streets, Torelli stopped Bella in front of a monster of a Victorian, gallantly set back from pristine hedging. This is where you live? Home sweet home, Torelli sang as he skipped up the walkway. In the imposing entry, an eagle-topped grandfather clock chimed next to a coat of armor holding a long jousting lance. Jesus, is that thing real? It's from the 19th century. Bella's head spun as she followed her new friend up a broad, center-cut staircase. How many rooms does this place have? 24, not including the maid's room. You got a maid? I have 3. Bella whistled as they rounded 2 dark corners and entered a shadowed room the size of an Egyptian tomb. A mastodon of a fireplace hulked across from a canopy bed fit for Marie Antoinette. A fainting couch swooned next to a triple mirrored vanity that looked like something in a Hollywood movie. Alice's room, Torelli whispered as he snapped on a lamp, shaded with stained glass Parisian street scenes. Who's Alice? My mother. You call your mother Alice? What else should I call her? Where is she? She's somewhere out west, getting some rest. What about your papa? Where's he? Torelli pulled Bella over to the vanity. Oh, I haven't seen Dudley since I was 3. Bella ran a hand across the lid of a jewel-top box. God, everything in here is so pretty. Don't steal that, Torelli said. It's a priceless family heirloom. He unpacked the loot they heisted. Tangy red delicious lipstick, Maybelline cover-up, rendezvous face powder, Camille eyeshadow, starfish false eyelashes, and the rest. I'm gonna make you look better than Betty Davis in Dangerous, Torelli proclaimed as he lined everything up on the vanity. Now go wash your face and hair in Alice's bath, then come back and see me. When Bella returned, Torelli produced a comb and scissors. Once he was done snipping, he grabbed the setting gel, curlers, and bobby pins. You've got a great figure, he said. Thanks, it's my best asset. For now. Have you fucked anyone yet? Torelli asked as he rolled and pinned. No, but I really want to. Have you? More than I care to count. Really? Like who? Oh, I never kiss and tell. Sometimes I dream about fucking Jesus, Bella confessed. Oh, I was fucked by Jesus, Torelli said, 3 times. Well, at least he looked a lot like Jesus. Bella played with the silver hairbrush and comb set on the vanity as Torelli continued to roll and bobby pin. She looked at him. Do you mind being a degenerate? She asked. Torelli pursed his lips and smacked his hands on his hips. What choice do you think I have? I ain't never met a boy like you. Boys like me are few and far between, except in Hollywood. That town is teeming with inverts. You're kidding. Clark Gable and Gary Cooper, for starters. That's ridiculous. Clark Gable is in love with Joan Crawford. It says so in Picture Show magazine. Oh, don't believe everything you read. Joan Crawford's in love with Greta Garbo. Trust me. Torelli pinned and patted the final curler. Then he picked up an eyebrow tweezer. Whatever you do, don't move your head. Bella flinched. Ouch, God damn it, that hurts. Don't be such a fucking baby. As Torelli continued plucking, Bella grabbed the vanity and bit her lip to keep from screaming. Have you ever been in love? She asked, eyes watering. I don't like to tie myself down, Torelli said as he tweezed. There are too many beautiful boys out there. Who's the most beautiful boy you've ever seen? Bella asked. Francis Anthony Mozzarella. Who's that? Torelli dropped the tweezers on the vanity. He slid a gold-tipped cigarette from a cut glass goblet next to the jeweled box and lit it like a diner waitress on a break. Francis Anthony Mozzarella is the most beautiful creature God has ever created. He took a dramatic drag off the butt, exhaled like Tallulah Bankhead and Faithless. He has the eyes of a wolf and the lips of a saint. When I first met him, he was a scrawny little thing. Then I hauled him over to LaPrinzi's gym. Now he's got shoulders like boulders and an ass that makes me want to scream. He sounds like a dream. He's a fucking masterpiece. Where does he live? He resides with his mama over on Kruger Place. That old lady is stone cold crazy. She wants him to become a priest. Torelli tipped the ash off the end of his cigarette and took another hit. He quit high school and works over at the Charms Candy Factory, shipping and deliveries. He calls me his little bird. Torelli inhaled, then blew out a perfect smoke ring. Tweet, tweet. Bella eyed the half-eaten pack of wild cherry charms next to the gold ashtray. Does he like girls? He likes everybody. I've knitted him 2 scarves, a sweater, a pair of mittens, an oarsman cap, and a posing strap. What's a posing strap? Never mind that. Torelli gently grabbed her chin. Now for the face. He tamped out his cigarette and with expert hands evenly applied the Maybelline cover-up. Remember, less is more unless you're going to a grand ball or a nighttime soiree. How do you know how to do all this? I worked in a beauty parlor in Patterson for a while. Then I worked at Cipollini's Home for Funerals, making up the dead. You did? I was fired because I made all the corpses look like Jean Harlow, especially the men. But don't worry, I've branched out since then. You know, for a queer boy, you've got some set of Coglione. I know, so do you. The 2 friends regarded each other. Then Torelli ceremoniously uncapped the tube of Tangy lipstick. Open your mouth and smile wide. Hey, you've got great teeth. Like a horse, Bella said, except for the one that's missing. How did that happen? My papa slugged me. Why? Bella saw the glint of her mama's blade as it sliced her papa's face. Because I entered a Beauty and the Beast contest with my pig, Abundantia. Did you win? Nah, my older sister and her stinking canary did. Torelli carefully smeared the bright wax on Bella's upper lip. Your papa sounds like a real jackass prize. My papa hates me, she said. Torelli was uncharacteristically silent for a moment. My father hates me too. So does Alice. She keeps threatening to have me carted off to a place to have the sissy hosed out of me. Really? Hold still. Torelli spread the lipstick across Bella's lower lip. Now press and spread your lips together, then blow me a devastating kiss, he said. Bella did as she was told. Stunning, Torelli said, congratulating himself. Simply stunning.
I have a question. I know, like, in my work, there's always a time where the piece comes alive. And I was just like wondering for you, was there a specific chapter or time as you're working on this book that when you thought, the beast lives, this works, I know it. Well, like, and what chapter was that? Like, how did that work for you?
Well, I knew as soon as I wrote the first chapter, The Jewish Cigar, that I was onto something. And the beast was definitely alive then. But it's the chapter that comes right after that, when she enters Coney Island for the first time. And Coney Island in all of its 1935 glory is in front of her. The Wonder Wheel, the roller coasters, the crowds, Nathan's, horns honking, calliope's singing, calypsos. You know, I mean, it's just, that's when it all sort of came together. And I knew I was onto something.
Nice. I have a question I like to ask about process. Like, when you're building a chapter, how does that work for you? Do you come up with a place? Do you do it like an actor does? Like, what do they want? Like, what is your process in putting together a chapter?
For me, it always starts with character. All of my writing starts with character, and that might come from my history as an actor, and also in terms of creating character. From my acting, I learned the greatest tool for an actor, in my opinion, is empathy. And so I always approach every character with as much empathy as I can muster. And I also try and think of that person, all of that person's colors, whether that person is good, bad, otherwise, or both. I want to know what makes that character tick. And I try to flip the hood open and see what's going on inside. And that's how I approach each chapter.
That leads me to ask you about Annie, who's her father, who is the one that slugged the tooth out of her. How did that character, who is that based on a real person? Like, how did you build that character who's like he's pretty evil, but he's not all evil? Can you talk a bit about it?
Well, I'd like to do that without spoilers, but the things that were perpetrated upon my great aunt were pretty harrowing in terms of the loss of the baby and what surrounded that. It was always a puzzle to me how that happened, why that happened. The great-grandparents that I knew, and I only knew my great-grandfather, my great-aunt's father, Bella's father. He died when I was about 3 years old. I remember sitting in his lap. My great-grandmother passed away when I was in college. They were lovely, lovely people. So it was a really huge puzzle to me why the baby was taken away, why she was treated the way she was. When I started writing, I just decided to make him the villain of the piece. I thought he had to be, but there's no resemblance between the Manny Donato in the book and my great-grandfather.
Some of the other characters I have questions about, like, where are they from? And also, actually, more broadly, why you made decisions to keep things exactly as they were with your aunt's story, but then you went on detours. Was there any reason, like, when did you decide, okay, I'm not going to just stick with my aunt's story? Can you talk about that a bit, about like why you expanded in the way you did?
Right. So my aunt for me was a mythic creature. She was this woman that blew into town during holidays once, twice a year, like a hurricane. And she had everybody in the family laughing. She was a 38 triple D. She was someone who at weddings would balance champagne glasses on her breasts. She didn't like me. I was an introvert. I was a quiet kid. She liked my brother, who was 2 years younger. He was called Keithy Bubbles because he was a bubbling kid. she would take one look at me and say, what the hell is that kid's problem? But I watched her and I was so intrigued by her and so enamored of her. And I couldn't get that out of my head.
Nice. How much, okay, of Bella, how much of Bella is you?
Bella is all of me, to coin a song that's in the book. I mean, beneath the exterior of this Jersey boy beats the heart of a bodacious burlesque queen. I just piled myself in there. And I mean, just sort of to get back at your original question, the character was based on the appearance of my aunt, based on the spirit of my aunt, but she became her own person. And she took off and she showed me where to go. And she showed me who she was. And she introduced me to Francis Anthony Mozzarella and Torelli Lombardi and her fucking father, who was an asshole. She led me through the entire 20-year process of writing this book.
I was just thinking when he was talking about the bodacious stripper that's inside him. So when we were roommates for those 3 weeks, like he of course was straight and had on his wall Judy Garland posters and Barbara Streisand, but always talking about his girlfriend Linda. And mind you, he was always straightening his hair with this, knit cap, straighten his curly hair with his knit cap.
Dry.
And he'd be like, Linda, I miss Linda. I'm like, get me the fuck out of here. So I got a single. Anyway, Dino, that's another character I'm interested in. Tell us about a little bit about Dino, where he came about, and also the sense of why you end up in Provincetown there.
Oh, I don't want to give that away either, but my grandmother, Bella's sister, the pretty one, told me a story of two suitors that came to the Hal Richardson scale factory where they lived. My great-grandfather lived in a small house. The whole family lived in a small house at the back of this huge factory complex in Clifton, New Jersey in the 1930s during the Great Depression. And it was really unusual for people to have a secure job in a place like that. And they had basically a farm back there. They had a huge Italian garden. They raised pigs and chickens and goats and hens, and they had eggs. And so what was the question?
Talk about Dino.
The
suitors.
Yes. So my grandmother, Bella's sister, told me a story of two suitors coming to the Hal Richardson scale factory to court her. One was my grandfather, who took her into the chicken coop and got her pregnant, and the other was a gangster. So she ended up marrying. They chased my grandfather into the woods with a shotgun, literally a shotgun wedding, and made him marry my grandmother. But the gangster stuck with me, and he was really intriguing to me. So I wrote him into the script, into the book.
Nice. Wait, just let me look at my notes for my questions. I've totally gone off this. Yeah, I made him basically all the things he was gonna read. I basically made them do all backwards, completely backwards. Which sorry about that.
Called improvisation.
Yes. Oh, here's something that really fascinates me. One of the things while he was working on this book was the question of Bella's interiority. Because a lot of times during the book, especially in the early draft, you saw what Bella did, but you didn't really know why she did what she did. Can you talk to us about how that started, why you made that choice, and where it went later? Bella's interiority.
It was a note that you gave me in Provincetown
That wasn't to pull that out of it, seriously.
during our writers' retreat. And you said, I need to know what she's feeling inside. I want to hear more of her thoughts. And that's when I started doing that. And I was adverse to writing that way. That was not at all a part of my writing style until we sat together and critiqued each other's work and had our writing retreat.
But that wasn't just a choice that you initially made, that you didn't feel like you wanted to show her interiority? Or
It was just the way I wrote.
Uh-huh.
It just wasn't a part of my writing lexicon to do that. And you told me it was missing. And I paid attention to that and I started putting it in there. So thank you.
it's such a better book because you made it. Okay, this we actually didn't talk about this, but we have to talk about this because it's the tomatoes on the cover. Food is a gigantic part of this book. It's luscious to read, and in fact has recipes all throughout the book that are just, I've had this Italian book. It's amazing. Talk more about that. Was that also near the beginning of writing it? You wanted to bring the food into it. Talk about that a bit with me, about the food in the book.
Yeah, I did. That was always something I wanted to do. You know, I grew up with incredible cooking. My mother was Portuguese. Jody, you'll attest to her French fries and her chicken parmesan. Jody is my kindergarten sweetheart. We've known each other for over 50 years, and she used to skip down the street, bang on the kitchen door, and beg for French fries. Yeah, my mother was an amazing cook. She learned to cook it when she was a teenager at a corner store in her neighborhood from an Italian woman. So she learned how to make tomato gravy and chicken parmesan and meatballs from that woman. And I gave that story to Bella. So when Bella's a little girl in the book, she goes to Lamonaco's Market on Kruger Place in Passaic and learns how to make tomato gravy there. My two grandmothers, my mom's mother, who was also Portuguese, was an incredible cook, and my father's mother, who's an Italian woman, was an amazing cook. So I grew up eating amazing food all the time. I took it incredibly for granted. And it actually wasn't until I was an adult and I moved out to LA that I actually started cooking for myself. And my mother sent me one of her favorite cookbooks, and I basically consider myself self-taught. But food is really important to me. And so it was really important for me to have that be an element of the book.
Wait, and did your aunt, Emily, did she actually cook and open a restaurant, or is that just an invention?
No. So it's real. So she was an incredible cook as well. All of my family was all about food and noise and love and sex and scandal and secrets. And so that's all of what I sort of took and distilled and transformed and put into the book. That was a question.
No, it was just about whether your aunt actually was a.
Oh, yeah. So without giving too much away, because I wrote over 1,000 pages. It took me 20 years to create this book. I had over 1,000 pages when I came to the end of just sort of spilling it all out. And it was actually my husband, who's sitting right there, who said, you know, maybe this isn't one book, maybe it's 2 or 3. And so I decided to take part 1 and make it a book. And now I have part 2 and part 3, which I'm hoping will be 2 additional books, book 2 and book 3 of the Belladonna trilogy. So book 2 will take place in World War II, Brooklyn and Prospect Park in a rooming house. And book 3 will take place in the 1950s. My aunt ran a truck stop diner off of Route 17 in East Rutherford, New Jersey. There was a room above the diner. She turned tricks in that room and initiated high school boys. She was brought up on charges of statutory rape and prostitution. So that's all in book 3, folks.
Do you want to do? No. Okay, hey, okay, so now we're gonna do questions and answers. Because it just feels unsatisfying with just the questions. Does anyone have questions? Yes, please.
2 and 3. Did she find the thing?
Don't answer that. I'm so determined if you do not answer that question. Yes, please.
No, the strong man was not based on a real person. I knew the basic story of how my aunt got pregnant when she was 15. I knew the name of the person who it was. I never got to talk to her in detail about that. Because when she was about 83 or 4, she was in Florida and the phone rang and she went and picked it up. And the guy on the other end of the phone said, "Is this Amelia Wasdijk?" And she said, "Yes." And he said, "Do you know who this is?" And she immediately knew who it was. And she burst into tears. So he had tracked her down, her son, when he was in his 60s and she was in her 80s. And they reunited then. That's not how my story ultimately ends. What was the question again? Oh, Francis, right. No, so I didn't know the details surrounding the pregnancy, but I wanted her to meet her match. She was a mythic bombshell. I wanted to meet the male version of the mythic bombshell. And that's how I created Francis Anthony Mozzarella, the most beautiful boy in the world, who poses for the portrait of Jesus at St. Anthony's Roman Catholic Church and seduces the priest.
He seduces everyone.
He does seduce everyone.
Okay, now.
Seduced me.
It's another book. Yes, please, your question.
Well, I'm just, like we were saying, I'm just stunned at how much it reads like a movie. Like I'm just visualizing it as a movie already. So are you visualizing it that way as well?
I'm just a really visual writer.
Are you visualizing it as a movie for?
Oh, am I like literally visualizing it as a movie?
Yeah, or and can you see it as
I can totally see it as a movie. I can see it as like an 8-part miniseries on Netflix or Apple TV. Amazon Prime.
it's
Oh, that's
family
like-
oriented?
Oh, wow.
That's Vivian Taylor, who I met. When did we meet Vivian? 1983. When I was an actor in New York, she was the extra and Under Five's casting director for As the World Turns. And I tested with Marisa Tomei, and you were the wrangler for the actors. There were 4 of us screen testing. None of us got the part because it was for an English board. They ended up testing every actor in New York and London for the role. They ended up casting a guy from South Africa. But there I was on a soundstage standing across from Marisa Tomei. And that's the first day I met Vivian, who I've been good friends with ever since. Okay. And you can cast the movie.
I'm just curious what your family thinks of
That's a great question. I'm going to be seeing most of my family on Sunday, so I'll be hearing a lot of it then. I think. But no, I've had a couple of phone calls, and my aunt, my mother's youngest sister, who was Bella's niece, broke into tears over the phone. My brother said, I can only read it in small increments. You've taken every element of our childhood and distilled it into this book. It's too overwhelming, but I love it. Yeah, but I'm curious what everyone else will say.
Other questions? Yes.
I didn't hear that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, a little bit louder, please.
I believe that's.
Oh, Big Betty LaMonaco, who made the tomato gravy. Yeah. So that's Miss Kidd, who I was a slam poet coach here in New York City for 8 years. And we worked together at PS 146 in the Bronx for 5 years, 4 years. Yeah. And we brought 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders to Joe's Pub to slam poetry. And we won. I love you, Miss Kidd. So good to see you. What was the question? Just kidding. I'm just kidding. Yeah, Big Betty LaMonaco. So Big Betty LaMonaco, that's the story that my mother told me. So she learned to cook from Mary LaMonaco at LaMonaco's Corner Market on Kruger Place. So I took that story and gave it to Bella.
That, by the way, is one of my first favorite chapters in the book is the Big Betty LaMonaco chapter. I love.
Yeah.
That's one that I think you start with the food thing.
Right.
It's just like kind of meatballs, like snowballs, all the way through the book, bigger and bigger and bigger.
Right. The whole food theme, exactly. Meatballs through the entire book. That's a great.
Yeah, I love that chapter. Love that character. Other questions? Yes, please.
Did your aunt know you were, what did she think when you were interviewing? Did she know you were going to write a book?
Absolutely. And she was hoping I would do something because at that point I had written the screenplay that was directed by Shirley MacLaine. She had seen the movie. There's a couple of things, stories that she told me that I put in the movie about her, and I transferred to the character of Bruno's mother. So she knew I was onto her. And she was really excited. So she thought, she kept saying to my mother's other sister, Joan, I'm going to be in the book. I'm going to be in the book. I'm going to be in the book. Little did she know, she is the book. She passed away in 2004, unfortunately, so she didn't get a chance to see it come to fruition. But she was well aware. And the Jewish Cigar, the first chapter that I read here tonight, when I finished it, I called her on the phone and I read it to her. And she was silent and she just said, boy, you must really love me. So I think her spirit's in the book for sure. And I hope she approves.
Yeah, please.
Your family, family, thirsty, you feel that time.
national pride. Especially as they get older. So hearing that there is, especially I grew up in Bergen County, so when you talk about his brother Bergen, who was 17, and Clifton, I'm like, okay, this is me. I'm wondering if you feel like there's any like your aunt, your family, or this book, your voice.
Yeah, all of it. So the question was, how much was growing up in New Jersey? How much of that was influence on the book, my life in Jersey, growing up as a Jersey boy from a Jersey girl? So thank you for that question. It's everything, and as you know, and it was everything to me. But I have one question for you. Is it tomato gravy or tomato sauce?
Gravy.
Absolutely, tomato gravy. Yeah, and a lot of my relatives are still there. In fact, I'm going to Clifton, New Jersey this Sunday to have a reunion with about, I'd say 23 of them in my Aunt Joan's kitchen. Yeah. Yeah. You can take the boy out of Jersey, but you can't take the Jersey out of the boy.
Very true. Having lived with him. Other questions? Yes, please.
What's the book writing process look like?
Was the book writing process more cathartic or therapeutic for me? Both. That is a great question. All of writing is cathartic for me. When I wrote the screenplay about the 9-year-old called Bruno, about the 9-year-old cross-dressing spelling bee champ from Queens, Long Island, that was cathartic for me because I didn't wear dresses. I mean, I wore dresses, but I didn't wear them to school and enter spelling bees in them. But I was bullied severely as a little kid for being pegged as queer. So writing to that and from that was incredibly cathartic for me. All of the characters in the Queen of Steeplechase part, in one form or another, are outcasts or misfits. And so I love to write for them and speak to them. And it's always cathartic for me. And it's always therapeutic. And it's always healing to do that. To not only write to the pain and the tragedy of being pegged as another or growing up as a misfit or an outcast. And I think pretty much all of us can relate to that in one small way or another, if not in a large one. But I also like to write to the joy and to the happiness and to the exuberance that claiming your identity and claiming your otherness and claiming your queerness can bring you. Yeah, so, thank you.
That question is actually a really great question.
Amen is right.
Oh, yeah.
Jazz hands. Exactly.
Any other questions? Do you want to read that first part? The opening? Yeah,
Okay.
It's actually kind of a nice way
To close.
to close, which is with the opening.
All right, so this is the first chapter in the book. It's called No One Like Her. Had William Randolph Hearst known about her, he would have inked her onto the front pages of his newspapers, directly above the banner headlines, barking about the war crawling across Europe. Walter Winchell would have broadcast about her on This Is Your World. They would have told you how beautiful she was, how men dropped in front of her and howled, how Einstein created a brand new theory, and how Freud folded his cards after she lit one of his cigars. Hollywood could have made her a great big star. Hollywood could have made her a great big star. She would have taken Betty Davis and wrung that bug-eyed ham bone dry. King Kong would have let go of Fay Ray, dropped that dizzy dame, those 102 Empire State Stories, just so he could hold her in his gargantuan hand. Glenn Miller would have raised his baton and crooned, "Come on, baby, front my band. You can swing. I know you can." Pity was never a song she chose to sing. Her anthems were always Shoo Shoo Boogie Boo and All of Me. When she Coney Island cooch danced, air raid sirens rang, Lucky Strikes lit themselves, and palm trees sprouted out of Coney Island sand. After her cooking spirits swooped in, meatballs were never the same. Everyone wanted to taste her tomatoes and dip their bread in her Sunday gravy. Had he met her, David O. Selznick would have ceased his search for his silly Scarlett O'Hara and cast her in a technicolor all her own. Fiddle-dee-dee. Frankly, my dears, there was no one like her.
David will be here to, if you don't have a book, please buy it back there. And he'll be here to sign them. It's a luscious, delicious, sexy, wonderful novel. I cannot recommend it highly enough. So let's go to it.
And I want to, before you do that, I want to thank you all for coming. And I especially want to thank BGSQD and Greg and Don. This is an amazing space. So I'm going to say this to you all. Please come back, visit, buy a book. To everyone out there in Zoom land, please, if you're close by, if you come into New York City, please visit the Bureau. The bookstore is an amazing place. And if you can't visit, go online and donate and support it. It's magical and it does a lot of good. So thank you for that. And thanks for having me here.
Thanks.